There are some things in life that don't come with instructions. They happen. Suddenly you're standing in a world that looks the same on the surface, but underneath, something shifted. The streets haven't changed. Calendar hasn't changed. People still ask you ordinary questions, but you know deep down that nothing is ordinary anymore. If you're watching this, there's a strong chance that something happened that changed your life in exactly the same way. You didn't mean to hurt anybody. You didn't wake up planning to cause harm. You didn't intend this outcome. And yet, here you are. You may still see it when you close your eyes. You may still hear it in quiet moments. You may still feel it in your body before your thoughts even catch up. For many people, the most confusing part isn't just the event itself. It's the aftermath. The strange emotional landscape that you're left to navigate without a map. The realization that the old rules don't quite apply anymore. People may tell you that it was an accident. They may tell you it wasn't your fault. They may tell you to be gentle with yourself, to move on, to focus on the future. And sometimes those words are well-meaning. Sometimes they even come from a place of love. But often they don't land, or they land and then they slide right off, because the place where you're hurting isn't easily reached by logic. What you're carrying doesn't live only in your head. It lives in your memory, in your conscience, in your sense of who you are. And that's why this kind of pain can feel so isolating. Our world knows how to talk about victims. It should. Our world knows how to talk about villains. But it has very little language for people who never intended harm and yet must live with its consequences. People like you. So many people who have caused unintentional harm end up learning the same lesson very quickly. This is not something you're supposed to talk about. It makes people uncomfortable. It disrupts simple moral categories. It doesn't fit neatly into conversations. And so you know what? It becomes a secret. Maybe you told a few people carefully. Maybe you told nobody. Maybe you told yourself that silence was the responsible thing to do. But secrets don't stay contained. They seep into your sleep, into your relationships, into the way you monitor your own joy. You may notice that when something good happens, something inside you flinches. When laughter rises, it's cut short. When peace shows up, even briefly, it feels unearned. A voice interrupts. How dare you enjoy this? How can you feel okay when someone else isn't here? Who do you think you are going on with your life? That voice can become constant. And over time, it can convince you that self-punishment is the same thing as responsibility. But they're not the same. Let me say this clearly because it matters. Punishing yourself forever is not accountability. Refusing yourself rest does not undo harm. Withholding joy does not bring anybody back. Living in perpetual shame does not make the world safer. What it does do is slowly reduce your life to survival. Many people who have caused unintentional harm live in a kind of quiet exile. They function, they show up, they care for others, but internally they have decided that they no longer get to fully participate in life. No celebration, no pride, no ease, just endurance. If that resonates, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. There's a particular kind of suffering that comes when your moral compass is intact, when you care deeply about others, and when your actions, even unintentionally, collide with those values. It's often called moral injury. Moral injury is not about being evil. It's about being good and finding yourself implicated in harm anyway. It's the wound that forms when you believe yourself to be one thing and what has happened cannot easily be reconciled. This is why phrases like "it wasn't your fault" doesn't always help. Because even if you were not legally culpable, something inside you still aches. Something still feels torn. You may feel like you failed at being the person you thought you were, or the person you hoped you were. And that kind of fracture, well, it kind of runs deep. Moral injury often brings shame, which is different from guilt. Remember, guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am something wrong. And shame has a way of telling you that you are no longer deserving of care or connection or peace. But here is a truth worth sitting with. The depth of your pain may actually be evidence of your goodness. People who don't care don't suffer this way. People without conscience are not haunted by remorse. People who lack compassion don't ask these kinds of questions. The fact that this matters so much to you says something important about who you are. You are more than what happened. That doesn't mean minimizing the harm. It doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. It doesn't mean rushing past grief. It means refusing to let one moment flatten the truth of an entire life. Another belief that often takes root after unintentional harm is the idea that there is one correct way to heal, and that if you haven't found it yet, well, you're doing it wrong. But healing isn't linear, it doesn't move in predictable stages, and it doesn't look the same for everybody. Some people fall apart immediately. Some hold it together for years before the weight finally lands. Some talk early, some don't find words until much later. There are many paths toward healing. The destination is not forgetting. The destination is learning how to live with what happened without being destroyed by it. And that takes time. It also takes support. This kind of trauma doesn't stay neatly contained in the mind. It lives in the nervous system. It affects sleep, concentration, appetite, memory, and the sense of safety that we might be holding for the world. It can make ordinary decisions feel heavy. It can make joy feel risky. It can make the future feel fragile. If you've noticed changes in yourself, it's not a moral failure. It's your body and mind responding to something overwhelming. And there is help for that. Seeking help is not a weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not a way of escaping responsibility. It's one of the most responsible things that you can do for yourself and for others. There's an ancient story about a young man named Hyacinth. He was killed accidentally, and according to the story, from the place where his blood touched the earth, a flower grew, bright, fragrant, alive. The story doesn't deny the tragedy. It doesn't excuse the harm. It doesn't erase the loss. But it also refuses to believe that devastation is the final word. The image is not about turning something terrible into something good. It's about acknowledging that life stubbornly insists on growth even in places that we wish had never existed. What if the place you most want to avoid becomes over time a place of honesty, humility, and transformation? Not because you wanted this, not because it's fair, but because human beings are capable of meaning-making even after unbearable loss. These videos are not here to rush you toward hope. They're not here to tidy things up. They are not here to offer easy answers. They're here to sit with you, to name what so often remains unnamed, to talk honestly about trauma, guilt, responsibility, and repair, to remind you that your life is not over, even if it has been changed forever. You may never forget what happened. You may never be the same as you were before. But different doesn't mean ruined. There is a way to remember without being consumed. There is a way to take responsibility without drowning in shame. There is a way to honor those who were harmed without erasing yourself. And you do not have to find that way alone. If you need to pause this video, go ahead. If something in you feels tender or raw, that's fine. If you feel unseen and unsettled at the same time, it's part of this work. It's slow work. It's courageous work. It's human work. In the next video, we'll begin by naming how common unintentional harm actually is, and why so many people believe their story is uniquely shameful when it is not. We'll talk about what it means to stop burying this experience in silence and instead give it a good funeral, one that acknowledges loss, tells the truth, and allows something new to grow. But for now, let this be enough. You're still here. You're more than your worst moment. And there is room, even now, for a life that holds both truth and mercy. We'll continue together.